Derick Giwner along with Michael Carter from the USTA, and we're here to learn to bet harness racing. In this segment, we're going to look at track configuration. And most people would think that, the horses are going around circles. What's the difference? Does the size really matter? And I'm here to tell you, and I'm sure Mike will agree, size does matter when it comes to the size of the track you're racing at. We're going to take a look at a few different things. The first thing we're going to look at is the sizes of the tracks. Let's look at our graphic here for the 4 different track sizes. The first one we have up there is half mile, which is 4 turns. Some of the tracks that use that are Yonkers, Northfield, the Little Brown Jug is raced over a half-mile track. And we're going to take a look at a race from Yonkers. I think it's the 2019 Rooney to show you to run to the first turn.
Yeah, and obviously this is going to be the shortest run up to the first turn and one of the shorter stretches. Actually, Buffalo Raceway in New York here actually has the longest stretch of all the half-mile tracks in harness racing. And, some horses, as you can see there, don't handle the turns all that well. A lot of them are sweeping. At Northfield, they are really banked.
Yeah, and you could see, and the reason why we let this run a little bit longer than we're going to let some of the other ones run is how short the back stretches are and how much time they spend on the turns. These turns come up often, and there are 4 of them in a half-mile race.
Yeah, and some horses, it's just not for them. They might come off the mile track to the half-mile track, and as you saw earlier, they may make breaks. They may not be able to handle the turns. Half-mile tracks just aren't for everybody.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Our second type of track up there is 5/8. On this track, we have 3 turns. We're going to take a look at a video here. I think this one's from Pocono of the Ben Franklin. You might remember this if you watch some of our other videos, from the slanted starting gate. But here, the run is a little bit longer into the first turn, and they're going after 3 turns.
Yeah, I like the 5/8 mile tracks because, for one, you have the slanted starting gate, and it allows everybody pretty much to get into a position. You have posts 4, 5, and 6 who do predominantly well on the 5/8 mile tracks. And, tracks like Pocono, they're super speedy through that first turn. It allows them to kind of get into a good early position and then contest it. As you see right here, with the 4-horse coming to the outside, they went an opening quarter of 26-3, but it allows them to make some kind of middle moves through a stretch before they get to the half.
No doubt about it. Our third type of track we're going to discuss is the 7/8 track. And this one's kind of unique because the run into the first turn is usually pretty long. We're going to take a look at a video from the North America Cup from 2019, and you'll see how far. You can even see the on-screen graphic of how far they get to go.
Yeah, definitely. And they also have some of the longer stretches. I know when I'm watching Woodbine Mohawk Park or Harris Hoosier Park, for instance, I'm always screaming, where's the line? Where's the line? Where's the line? Because there's just so long down the stretch. And some horses, Derick, as you know, they get loose on the lead and they come in down the stretch. They're up by 3 or 4 and they think they might be done, and then they start to kind of tire a little bit, and it allows horses to kind of come from behind.
Yeah, it's a completely different ball game. Even from 7/8 tracks to the mile tracks, it's a lot different. Even though they're both big tracks, they run up into the first turn. It gives more of the horses a chance to settle and find their position before they get to the turn, so they don't have to lose ground. By lose ground, we mean it's harder to race on the outside because you're covering more distance.
Yeah, and on the bigger tracks, like the 7/8s, like Woodbine Mohawk Park, and the mile tracks is where you see some of those 11 and 12 horse fields that we discussed before in one of our other trip handicapping things, and that kind of hurts post 9 and 10 because those horses start from the second tier towards the inside, so it kind of gives them a little bit more of an advantage.
Let's take a look at our final video for the mile tracks, and the mile tracks is a lot different. And there, you see here's the Meadowlands. This is the Meadowlands pace. The run to the first turn is pretty short.
Yeah, the run to the first turn, especially at the Meadowlands, is pretty short. And, on some of the mile tracks, they can, arrange the quarter poles where they want them. But at the Meadowlands, for instance, you got to kind of, show up. That's why I like the some of the 1 1/8 races there, because there's more of a run up. But you definitely have to get into a good early position. That's where you see at the Meadowlands, a lot of horses, they'll kind of fan out as they go around that turn.
Yeah, they're just trying to, we call it floating away, is what we call it in the sport. You kind of leave a little bit, you just want to see what's going on, and then you figure it out from there. We're going to take a look at our second slide, and this one I've titled Same But Different. A lot of times you have the same track, size-wise, but that doesn't mean the circumstances are the same. Northfield Park has a passing lane, Yonkers Raceway doesn't, and they're both half-mile tracks.
Yeah, right. And like you say here, the banking of the turns, for instance, some tracks are flatter. And, if you want to compare it to something, almost like a NASCAR type track, tracks like New Hampshire are very flat. Tracks like Bristol are really banked. So you have tracks like Northfield who are super duper banked, and you have some that don't have that degree of banking to allow some of those outside horses a better chance.
The second thing up there is length of stretch. Just because you have, let's say, 2 half-mile tracks, doesn't mean they're the same length. The Yonkers Raceway at one point had a 660-foot stretch. They've shortened that up since. Yep. There are some tracks, I think Northfield is short as 440 or something like that.
Yeah, it's super short, and like I reiterated earlier, I mean, Buffalo Raceway in Buffalo, New York, actually has the longest stretch of all the half-mile tracks in the country. So you have a chance to kind of close more at Buffalo Raceway than you do, say, at Northfield or Yonkers.
Mm-hmm. And different tracks, even if they're the same size, sometimes they'll start in different spots. Yep. I mean, a track like Batavia is a good example. They don't actually start where the race is supposed to start. Yep. They start a little before. We call it the quick start.
Yes, they get the or the run up, so to speak. They give them, a few extra yards to kind of get going, because that run to the first turn is just, it comes really quick, and those turns are really sweeping.
One of the things that can play havoc with racing and the conditions is the weather.
Yep.
I mean, and some tracks handle the better weather differently than others. Meadowlands happens to be a track where it could rain all at once and the track just becomes faster. It could be freezing outside, like minus 10, and for some reason that track seems to get faster as it gets colder.
Look at what we dealt with at Lexington last week. We got all that rain throughout the day, and it seemed as the day went on, the track kind of got a little bit faster, a little bit more firm, and it allowed the horses to kind of, go a little bit quicker.
One thing you'll notice when it comes to bad weather, most tracks are faster when it's a little bit wet. Just a little bit of rain makes all the difference. If it hasn't rained for 30 days, that doesn't necessarily mean the track is so fast. You could water the track as much as you want, but nothing is the same as rain.
No, not at all. Some tracks, they need that little bit of moisture. I go back to Lexington from 2019, where they hadn't had rain in over 30 days, and they finally got rain on Futurity Day, and it completely changed the handicapping aspect. We saw horses like Sharton and South Windazzi taste defeat at Lexington because of the moisture inside of the racetrack.
Well, that's a look at the Learn to Bet harness racing segment for track configuration. There's a lot of different size tracks out there. Hopefully you'll find one you like, and it's really important to just stick with one track or one track size. I think you become an expert in one is better than being a novice in all.
Yeah, for sure. The track that you watch, whether it be Yonkers or Northfield or the Meadowlands, you start to learn the horses and kind of figure out what kind of trips horses are capable of getting. And you know what? You may run into a bias one night or a speed bias that you may kind of pick up on. Those are the things you got to look at.
Well, hope you learned something in this Learn to Bet harness racing segment. Good luck.